All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rhythms of Access podcast. This is our very first episode. This podcast is a podcast where disabled artists and musicians open up about their experiences navigating disability and access in the music industry um, from across the world. And this podcast is brought to you by Blurring the Boundaries and the Canadian Accessible Musical Instrument Network, as well as support from the Social Sciences and Human Research Council of Canada. This is a mouthful, but here we are. Today we are joined by our very special guest, Miss Jacqui. She is a multi-talented artist known for her impactful spoken word poetry, her soulful music and advocacy, and many other artistic practices that she does, which I'll let her reveal at some point throughout this podcast. But before we kick it up here, I thought it would be fun to do a little like icebreaker for us to get to know Miss Jacqui up close and personal. So, Miss Jacqui, welcome.
Hi, hello.
It's so
Thanks
good to
for
see
having
you.
me.
It's so good to see you. Thank you for being like the first guest for our very first episode. This is
Listen,
very
I'm an
exciting.
overachiever, so being first is my thing. Yeah.
I I like it. Life goals, life goals. That's good. Yeah. So just for people to get to know you, just have a little icebreaker question here. And maybe you can let us know about yourself here. So, if your art could throw a dinner party with three historical figures, fictional or real, who would you want to invite and what would that conversation look like? So,
Ah,
if your art, so this is not you, this is like your art.
it's
So,
my
if your art could throw a dinner party, who would be
Mhm.
invited?
Okay.
Let's
So
start with that.
my art would go with Billy Waters,
Okay.
who is um known for being one of, if not the first, like disabled artist in the UK, black disabled artist specifically.
Okay.
um, because he essentially became an amputee and then couldn't like work the quote unquote traditional jobs. So he
Yeah.
started to like make music and stuff. Um, so I think my art would gravitate to him,
Him
just
as one of the guests.
as
Okay.
one of the guests. Um, okay, I'm gonna go left field with the next person.
That's okay.
Um, I think it would my art would gravitate towards like Job in the Bible.
Okay. 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 We're getting dark. That's okay. I mean, I know Job had a very difficult life, so let's hear it.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting in terms of like what can you give someone who has it all but then loses it and then like but still kind of has faith but like
Huh.
is human essentially, like that, like
Mm-hmm.
paradox of like having faith but also like having moments of like not sure if I should.
Hmm. Yeah.
um yeah. uh and then
Okay.
hmm then I think, ooh, historical figures, right?
Historical or even fictional.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hercules.
Hercules.
Actually, not
Interesting.
Hercules. I take that back. The what are the muses from Hercules? Um,
Okay.
yeah, them specifically. Just because I feel like they would give good auntie advice, but like cool auntie advice. They know how to harmonize. 5-part
Yeah.
harmony.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's who I pick.
Okay. Very interesting. So we have Billy Waters,
Mhm.
we have Job, we have Hercules. Okay. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. And what would that conversation look like, with these three guests?
Yeah, I think they would all have a story to tell, and
Hmm.
like I guess for me, it would be like understanding how, even though they might have been through like really hard things, how they persevere, how
Hmm.
they did things not because they wanted to like be known or celebrated for the things they did. They just did it because
Hmm.
that's what they wanted and had to do.
Yeah.
And kind of like they weren't doing it for the accolades or things. So I think it would be a conversation around like staying true to self and life lessons in all kinds of like different forms. And like, yeah, I think it would be like a real like you walk away from that conversation, go, yeah, I didn't know I needed that advice, but I've
Hmm.
got it now. So yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. That's very cool. Thank you. Thank you. So now let's get up close and personal. Now that we know that your art would have invited all those amazing figures, and the story that they had to tell. Now I'd like to learn about what story do you have to tell? Like, um, how did you start your journey as a poet and a songwriter? And what led you to kind of like blend both spoken word and music? So let's
Yeah,
start with your journey. Yeah.
Jenny, I think it's been an interesting one. And I don't think I necessarily, if I'm honest, picked this journey. I feel like this journey
Hmm.
picked me.
Hmm.
So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a cardiologist. Like I was a
Okay.
huge nerd. I still am
Okay.
kind of a nerd.
Yeah.
I'm a space nerd, and I'm fascinated by the human body kind of nerd. Um,
Okay.
so I was always creative, but
Yeah.
because I didn't see any disabled people who looked like me or came from where I came from in terms of like
Yeah.
community and stuff, I just thought it wasn't something that I was quote unquote allowed to do. So
Hmm.
I avoided it. I was just like, oh, like I like being creative, and I would like secretly do it at home, like in the comfort of my house with my family. But
Yeah.
like at school, I'd be like, "Oh no, don't ask. Mm-mm-mm-mm. I don't want.
Yeah.
Don't give me nothing creative. Like give me the physics and maths and things that you can
Yeah.
get right and wrong." And then I met a phenomenal woman called Cat Francois,
Okay.
and I always wrote secretly, but I didn't know it was poetry because the way that I was introduced to poetry was during like GCSEs, which is like a national like test that you have to do to like be able to go to the
To
next
college
level
and
of college.
university.
Yeah, and all of that.
Yeah.
So um we got war poems, and the way my like English teacher would explain it, I just was very
Yeah.
like she was like so into it. She'd be like, okay, so he was talking about he was standing by the window and there were some blue curtains. What does the blue curtains mean? And I was just like, maybe he just like blue. Maybe like he just inherited the curtains because the last people who had the home didn't take it
Yeah.
with them. And she was very like, no, but it means like he's sad. And I'm like, how do you know that? So it really
Yeah.
put me off of like poetry because I was like, if this is what poetry is,
Yeah.
and I don't really have any ties to these white men
Yeah.
who were in a war talking about
Hmm.
this and that. Like I couldn't see myself in that, so I was really like, ugh. But when I met Kat, she kind of was just like, you have to learn all of the rules to break the rules. Like your voice is unique, and you need to tell the stories that you want to tell and how you want to
Hmm.
tell them. And she didn't like patronize me or sugarcoat it, or because I felt like a
Hmm.
lot of people are scared to tell me as a disabled person specifically that like something isn't good.
Hmm.
There's no like quality control. Like
Right.
I
Right.
purposely give like do something bad and people be like, oh my wow,
Yeah.
that's so great. And Kat didn't do that. She was like, Jacqui, that's bad. Like
So can
Jacqui,
I pause you right there? Can I pause you right there for a
yes.
second? So I know, like as an artist, it can be very difficult to receive critical criticism, right? Like um, I guess you must be very comfortable in your art and your skin about the work that you produce in order to be received, in order to be okay receiving critical feedback.
Yeah.
Um, has that always been the case, or is that something that you know you matured to and were like, you know what, in order for me to grow as an artist, I need real raw feedback.
I think it's a bit of both. I think
Hmm.
growing up in the family that I grew up in, like we roasted each other for fun.
Okay.
So like at home you just built a tough skin for like being roasted. So you can't like I think the way me and my siblings are, we're very like, oh, we can roast you in the house, but if we go out, nobody can talk to you like out of the side of
Hmm.
their neck. Like it's not gonna happen. So I think in terms of when it comes to my art, I was always looking for things that are going to make me better. And I
Okay.
understood that criticism was a way to get better. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily something you automatically have to take on. Like someone could say, I don't like this line, I don't understand it. And it's about kind of filtering, is that a universal thought or is that unique to that person?
Hmm.
So I think I was very much like I want to be better at making like writing lyrics and being a poet and being a musician. I want to be better at it.
Hmm.
And because um when I started in like artsy things, like I started in theatre essentially, but
Okay.
I didn't get that feedback. It was always like, oh well done, and it was just like, but everyone around me is getting
And that's
upset
it.
how you get better. And actually, the way you said that, you could have tweaked it. And it criticism
Hmm.
doesn't have to be like, oh my god, you're hot garbage, and people are screaming at you. It could just be like, you see the way you delivered that line. I think you
Hmm.
should play it again and try a different tone. And it's about helping, like shaping
Yeah.
the best version of that art possible. And I think as a disabled person, I didn't get that a lot. People are just happy that I got out of the house. Like when you're in the supermarket and people are like, "Oh my god, well done!" I'm like, "Well done to you too." Like we're both in the same place. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think I crave criticism within reason
Yeah.
because me and the block button are friends.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it makes you better as an artist, and but also not all criticism is for you.
Right.
It has to come from people that you either admire or you trust or they
Hmm.
understand like the journey that you've been on or that you want to go on. I think it has to
Yeah.
come from people that they're where you want to be or they've done a part of the journey that you're kind of going on. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Interesting. So, how did you, in that process, in that journey, how did you find your voice? Um, how did you, was there like any special, pivotal moment within your music career, or your art career, where you're like, this is Miss Jacqui? Like, this is not like the influences of Miss Jacqui, but this is my voice, this is my tone, this is my sound.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
Oh, that's that's a great question. I think for me it was okay, so I've always written poetry. Now I know it was poetry. I've always written it, but it was for me, like, and just yeah, just to a way of me understanding the world and understanding perspectives and all of that. But I think the moment that I was like, oh, I'm not trying to be like anyone else. Um,
Hmm.
I'm trying to like I have something to say and I think it's valuable. Like, was when I decided to put out my first single is essentially when that happened. And it was when I recorded an entire EP, but I was just like, I'm gonna put out one single and one single only. And listening back to that single and the whole EP in its entirety, I was just like, I've never,
Wow.
what, who is this? Like,
Wow.
this is what I could do when I'm not trying to please anybody. I'm literally saying the things that I want to say that are important to me and important to the communities I come from. And it's really funny because that EP Perception, everyone thinks it's all about me, and it's like, that's
Hmm.
so sweet that you think that, but these are all pockets of stories that I've heard, or I've dedicated it to a group of people who might have been having similar feelings but couldn't articulate it, and I tried to articulate it the best way I could for them. So it was just, yeah, that moment I literally was like, girl, you've arrived.
Wow.
And now you have to stay here. So figure it out.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. Wow. And how long have you been in the business?
Officially or unofficially?
Whichever.
Unofficially, wait, I have to do maths.
Or when, okay, let's say, when did you start making bank? I'm not saying like, blowing cash everywhere, but when, I mean, maybe you are, I don't know, but
Listen,
when when did you start, like, making a living out of it?
I was, so at the time I was making a living from poetry and then transitioning into music,
Okay.
and I always thought I had to keep those two worlds different. So
Also, they
when
were
I
not combined yet.
no, so when I started poetry, it was pure poetry, and like I was doing open mic nights and like testing out my craft on stage. And I think
Okay.
when people see me on stage, they're like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "Listen, I'm true to this. I'm not new to this. Like I know how to do that." But I think when I first got paid, I said, "Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean you want to pay me for the words that I wrote in my bedroom, like in my
Wow.
mama's house? You wanna pay me to go on stage and recite
Yeah.
words that came in my brain?" I was so shocked. I actually had to ask him. I was like, "Are you sure? Like, I'll just
Wow.
take a sandwich and like travel. Like, I'm like, it's fine." I'm like, "No, no, no, we'll pay you." And I was just like a little bit flabbergasted that
Yeah.
people would pay for my work. And then when I first got like my first like music, quote unquote,
Yeah.
um, gig, I was just like, "Oh my god, how did I scam these people? Like, how
I'm dead.
did I convince them to pay
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
to, like, just, I'm getting paid to have a really good time on stage. How did I do this?"
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't fully understand, but I think that's when I knew that I could legitimize like my art.
Okay.
I thought I had to like eventually get like a traditional 9 to 5 to be able to
And do
sustain.
that on the side. Okay.
Yeah, and it was like it would be like my fun little thing that I did after work. Um,
Okay.
yeah. So the fact that like I'm not rich. I mean, like if people still want to book
Hmm.
me, I'm a starving poor artist, and
Uh-huh.
I need you to
Hmm.
book me always. But I mean, the fact that
I
I
mean,
could,
I see that wool like sweater there that you're wearing. For those who are just listening to the podcast, Miss Jacqui is wearing this kind of like nice like fall winter type brown sweater. It's yeah, it's some
listen,
fine thread. It's some
this
fine
is.
thread.
It looks very it might look expensive. I'm telling you now, I'm a girl who grew up not with a silver spoon. I know how to find quality things for very cheap. Um,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, no,
Okay.
I like, yeah, this jacket. This has a whole story to it. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, no, it's like one of my favorites. It's super light, but it's super warm. And like as a like wheelchair user, I need
Hmm.
thin so it can fit down the like my back.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I also want to be warm.
Yeah.
So to find this was like if I could get a
The
seamstress or a tailor to make this in like 12 different colors. I don't know what the material is. If they could find
You
this
would.
material and just, yeah.
So once we see your tailor, we'll know that like Miss Jacqui is really making proper bank. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There
We'll
will be
make note of
signs.
that.
There will be signs.
All right, we'll make note of that. November 2024. So Miss Jacqui, quick question. As a wheelchair user artist, right? What unique challenges have you like encountered um, throughout your artistic journey, and what victories have you celebrated along the way?
Gift. I don't know how much time we got.
Give
I
me a
think
synopsis
okay, synopsis.
so
I
that I
think
have an excuse to invite you again for another episode.
whenever I'm available. Yeah, I think some of the challenges are like inaccessible stages,
Hmm.
inaccessible venues, um,
Hmm.
like the idea that a venue can be accessible for an audience member, but isn't accessible for an artist.
Hmm.
That never really made sense to me. Like,
Mhm, mhm,
um,
mhm,
but also that idea of when people are like, yeah, you need to like go to all of these networking things or go and meet people here, and it's like that's all
mhm,
nice, but it's in a basement or up a
hmm,
flight of stairs, or it's in a place that's really inaccessible and doesn't have good transport links. So when it finishes at 11 p.m. at night, I've got to go the longest way to get home. Um,
hmm,
and I think even just people's perceptions of like what my abilities are, like people are making huge assumptions. Um, and I think that is just like an attitudinal barrier,
mhm,
um, because I don't think maybe it's changing now, like little by little, but like when I started, there wasn't any platforms for that I knew of for disabled artists.
hmm,
And when people are like, yeah, you should open for this person, I'm like, how do I get to them
hmm,
if it's always inaccessible or they
hmm,
play really niche places and so forth? So I think some of the challenges have been like physical barriers, but
mhm,
also attitudinal barriers in terms of like
hmm,
people going, oh, like I've heard of music, but like, first of all, we wanted to perform, but the stage isn't accessible.
hmm,
I can't solve that problem. So excuse me. Um, but I think some of the victories are like having those conversations, starting those conversations, because
mhm,
I also give people grace. People don't
mhm,
know what they don't know,
mhm.
but as soon as you know, now it's a choice.
Great.
So if I've said to a promoter or a producer of a show, hey, that venue that you picked isn't accessible, but keep me in mind, I'll definitely be up for doing the show.
Yeah.
And they come back around and then they're like, hey,
Hmm.
Miss Jacqui, we want you for this thing. And you still pick an inaccessible venue. That's a choice. That is a
Gotcha.
blatant choice. So I think, yeah, some of the victories are like just making people aware, but
Hmm.
also as much as people when I started, I was about to name and shame as well. Oof, Jackie, be careful. Um, like, oh, your career's not going to survive, or you've got to make this kind of music, or you know, you have to dress a certain way, or to fit into a mold.
Right.
My career survived, and I had a
Hmm.
whole year where I refused to perform if it wasn't accessible.
Hmm.
Absolutely, I said because
Oh
also
wow.
I think that if me as a disabled artist is performing at venues that aren't accessible, I'm putting my community at risk. And
Hmm.
I'm never going to be that person in terms of
Hmm.
I used to make really stupid choices as like a young artist, and I can say that about me is
To
because
performing.
yeah, I'd be like I people would lift me onto the stage, and that's not safe.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
because I really wanted to essentially show that I had the skills and talents
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this is what I wanted to do. So I had
Mm-hmm.
a year of like not doing any shows that weren't accessible. And
Hmm.
most people told me, Jacqui, your career is going to be dead in the water. So just, be aware. But actually, what happened is people respected it
Hmm.
and I thrived. And I think that's one of the victories is that I listened to that voice,
Hmm.
the thing that drives me. And I'm I wouldn't call myself a selfish artist. I'm very much about my communities, um,
Hmm.
and how they're represented,
Yeah.
and 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 I think that's a victory in itself. And I'm not saying that I'm this. I am not saying by any means that I am the spokes person for the community. I am a human being who will make
Yeah.
mistakes and all of that, but I always think about my communities when I make decisions. Um,
Right.
and I think that's another victory. But also, like, I've gotten to perform now. I could call myself international, because I got to perform in in Canada, and that was
It's
great.
true.
And now I
It's
can
true.
there's an extra zero on that invoice,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I've gotten
So for everyone who doesn't know, Miss Jacqui performed in Toronto earlier this year in 2024, and it was phenomenal. So definitely, if you want to book her to come back to Canada or wherever you are, uh, please do, because you will not be disappointed. That's for sure. You will not. Absolutely. Wow.
no, I
Okay.
appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, I'm available. Find me and
Yeah.
book me internationally. Great. Um,
Okay.
but yeah,
Okay.
I think victory is always it's the little things as well. Just
Yeah.
knowing that your art touches people or reaches people that
Mm-hmm.
you never thought it would. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, how would you say your experiences as a Black woman with disability influenced your work and shaped your journey in the music and arts industry?
Again, how much time do we have? Uh, I think it's shaped my journey a lot because
Hmm.
even things like festival lineups, there's
Hmm.
still this like conversation about why are they always like 80% male?
Yeah.
Um, let alone how many lineups have black women,
Hmm.
let alone how many lineups have disabled people, full stop.
Hmm.
But as a black disabled woman, I'm already up against it.
Hmm.
And I think it shaped my art because I think art has to come from, or music, like any creative form, has to come from an authentic place.
Hmm.
And subconsciously, it's always going to have tones or essences of those parts of my identity,
Yeah.
because that is my lived experience. I don't go out going, "Ooh, I'm gonna write a song about being black," or "Ooh, I'm gonna go out and write a song about being disabled." That's
Right.
not what I do. But there
Hmm.
might be tones and inklings in like a lyric. I
Hmm.
have a song called Energy, and there's a lyric in there that says, don't give away your spoons just because they want you to. And
Ooh.
that isn't for that isn't necessarily for the non-disabled people.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
for my disabled community because we know like what spoon theory is.
Yeah.
Um, and for like people who don't know, I can't remember her name, and it's really bad right now. Um, but there was a lady who tried to explain to her non-disabled friend what it means to be disabled in terms of energy, in terms of
Hmm.
like labor and time energy and things like that. And um, yeah, it's just a really good theory of like the emotional, physical, and mental energy it takes to be
Yeah.
disabled sometimes. Um, Christine, yes. Sorry.
So you want to tell people what's happening in the background that sparks that kind of like reaction from Jackie here. So we have our assistant producer here, Kristen Tolan, in the background that you guys don't see, but she just sent a quick message to us in the chat here of who this person that Jacqui is talking about. Who is it, Jacqui?
Christine, I'm gonna butcher this. I'm so sorry. Misharando.
Okay.
Sorry, Christine, if
Randino.
you
Yeah.
ever hear this, I apologize for butchering your last name. But yeah, definitely check out her spoon theory. It like really makes sense.
Hmm.
But yeah, that was like I might have lines and things like that in
Hmm.
my work that might be for different communities. Like I have written stuff that's like, oh, and I say like, oh, I love you like good food. That's something that
Hmm.
like my family would say to each other. Like if someone loves you like good, they love you, and that's not for
Hmm.
everybody. That's just for people who get it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think it's shaped, but also I think my journey has been a strange one because I think people automatically assume that as a black woman I should sing R&B, and
Hmm.
I love R&B, but I am not an R&B singer. Like I'm not.
Hmm.
Or people assume that I should act or dress a certain way because I am a black woman,
Hmm.
or I should talk a certain way, or I should sing certain lyrics, or I
Hmm.
should say this kind of stuff. So I've really had to like come against that in terms of no, I'm going to
Hmm.
be who I am, and I'm sorry that it doesn't fit in the mold that you have in your brain. But I'm
Yeah.
sure you're gonna like the mold that I made for myself. Like,
Hmm.
so yeah, my journeys as a black disabled woman hasn't been a linear one by any means. Um,
Hmm.
but it's also navigating the industry in which I want to be a part of, but
Hmm.
trying to force me down different paths.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, I'm still on it, so I must be having a good time.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I just want to touch on this very, very quickly if you're able to. What it's been like collaborating with others on projects and performances, and what you wish other people understood about accessible collaboration in the arts. Just like to touch on that very, very briefly.
Yeah, I think collaboration is the life source of every like artistic practice.
Hmm.
Um, even like your favorite musicians didn't write their entire album by themselves. Like
Hmm.
let's just be honest, okay?
Hmm.
So I think collaboration is so important for like creative genius.
Hmm.
Um, that people often forget that nothing is an isolate, like it's not a me sport, it's like a we sport.
Right.
So I think that's number one, but I also think having access from the beginning um is important because then everyone is essentially on the same playing field.
Yeah.
It's not oh well, if that's not in place that person can't be included. That's not what creativity should be about. It should be
Hmm.
about how do we bring as many people in as possible to get a variety of personalities and like lived
Hmm.
experience and all of that, because if you don't have that like variety, all music would sound the same,
Hmm.
and if all music sounds the same, what are we doing? So I,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to access, it doesn't have to be as complicated as people think. I think people hear access and go, ah, what am I doing? I don't know. Ah, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. Rather than going, actually, let me collaborate with someone who can. But also, I think people need to understand that access costs money.
Hmm.
And that's okay to say. And I know people get really like weird about talking about money and art,
Yeah.
but access costs money. And
Yeah.
if somebody is telling you this is what they require to be able to do their best work,
Yeah. Yeah.
that could always be a conversation, but it shouldn't be, oh, well, we can't afford it, so we're going to exclude this community of people. That just doesn't make
Hmm.
sense to me. And I love collaborating with people, so I'm always up for it. My DMs are open, respectfully. Again, me and the block
All
button are
right.
friends. But yeah, I think you never know where your next great collaborator will come from. So
Hmm.
open, yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Um, what advice would you give to aspiring disabled artists? And is there something that you wish you knew when you started out?
Advice I would give is there is no blueprint for you. People
Hmm.
will often tell you, "Oh, go and like follow your favorite artists' careers and then do what they did." Absolutely not. There is no blueprint for you, so create your own.
Hmm.
You will make mistakes along the way. That's fine. We are all human and living, so just pivot, pivot when you can. Um,
Mhm.
and then advice I wish I knew. Oh, advice I wish I knew when I was starting. Nobody really knows what they're doing. Like we're all just winging it. Anybody who like goes, yeah, I know everything, run from them as far and as fast as you can. Um, Everyone is just figuring it out, and some things work and some things don't. So I wish that
Yeah.
I knew that sooner. That everyone's winging it, and that's fine. Some people just wing it more gracefully than others. But yeah, I think those are yeah. That's what I wish I knew at the start.
So basically, people should create their own blueprint.
Yes. Yeah, create your own blueprint. That's the
Yeah.
best way to do it.
Wow. Okay. So I can't believe this time has gone so quickly. But I just want to highlight: do you have any current projects you're working on, or upcoming projects that you'd like to share with people viewing or people listening to this podcast?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So currently out is my latest EP called Notes to Self. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I took a really big sabbatical and then came back just ready to go.
Yeah.
So that's out. Listen to that.
All
Uh,
platforms.
on all digital platforms, wherever
Note
you
to
can
self.
find Miss Jacqui, I will be there. Notes to self, and I've got a music video as well out from one of the songs off of the EP called Barely, which is actually my first ever music video. So please go and
Okay.
watch and enjoy. And that was a labor of love because how many disabled
Okay.
people have you seen in music videos? That's a whole
Yes.
nother conversation. And there might be some more videos coming.
Okay.
That's an exclusive just for you, Gift.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that, and then just like come and watch me and my shenanigans on social media. Um,
Yeah.
I mostly shenanigans on Instagram, which is just at I
Okay.
am Miss Jacqui. On all of them because you have to be these days, but that's where you'd find me mostly. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. We're going to have that listed on the links in the descriptions below, and people can look for you there. Miss Jacqui, it's been an absolute delight and a pleasure to have you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time. And yeah, really excited in all that you're working on. And I hope people will get to reach out to you and have the pleasure that I've had to collaborate and work with you in art, because I think the world needs more artists like you, artists who are humble, artists who are always wanting to learn and ready to grow. I think that's how we're able to give better into the world. So thank you for your gift of love. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And stay tuned for our next episode in a few weeks. We'll have another artist coming through, and have a good one. Bye bye.
Bye.